Good morning, CLC family. We're so happy that you're here and joining us this morning. And I invite you now and sing with me, Divine Love, through me, blesses and multiplies all the good I am and have, all the good I give and receive. I am prosperous now, and so it is. And now let me invite you to relax in this moment. Just take a breath, letting go of your week that has passed, letting go of anything you have coming up the next week. Relax your body, relax your mind. Fill your lungs with cool, crisp air. Breathe out all that no longer serves you. And allow yourself to be here now. Universal love enfolds me. Universal wisdom inspires me. Universal spirit enlightens me. Universal power encircles me. I am one, and all is well. As we begin the inner healing process, let me invite you to relax in quiet confidence, opening yourself to the miracle-working higher power. Now symbolize the unity of your thinking and feeling nature by touching your chest with your right hand, and let my words act as your own for your own inner healing, acceptance, and receptivity. I acknowledge that there is a power, intelligence, and wisdom greater than my own. I am in the midst of it, and it is in the midst of me, sensitive and responsive to my every thought, word, action, and feeling. I now make this true for myself by saying aloud, I acknowledge.
I acknowledge.
Acknowledging the higher power working through my life, I admit that I am personally responsible for solving my own problems while being guided and assisted by something greater than myself. As I surrender to the conflicts of my ego, to the wisdom of the infinite presence, I simply speak these words. I surrender.
I surrender.
Knowing that forgiveness is the key to unconditional love and the feeling of heaven, I now unconditionally forgive anyone and everyone who has ever injured me in any way, real or imagined. And I now forgive myself for all my mistaken judgments and their resulting actions. From my deepest level of understanding, I now say, I forgive.
I forgive.
Realizing that I continually experience the effects of my own thinking, I now choose to allow this higher power to recreate me deeply, filling my mind with thoughts that are only constructive, positive, loving, and beautiful. I call upon this divine inflow by stating aloud, I choose.
I choose.
I now center upon that one special idea that I am willing to accept as real for me in this coming week. Visualizing the idea as already acted upon and brought to pass. In seeing my idea become a fact of my experience, I enjoy the happiness and peace of my thought fulfilled and gratefully speak these words. I accept.
I accept.
Knowing that I have an everlasting place in the midst of the power that sustains all creation, as well as the support of all those around me, I allow myself to relax in the peace of fulfillment and gratitude and say, I release.
I release.
Now, in my mind's eye, I envision the presence of someone near and dear to me. This could be a friend, a family member, a teacher or mentor, someone who has touched my life in deep and loving ways. Someone who may not be physically present with me in the room this morning. I turn toward that image in my mind's eye and say, I am grateful for the good in your life.
I am grateful for the good in your life.
I now open my eyes, turn to the world around me, and joyfully speak to either the person physically in the room or virtually on this program, and share in my gratitude and confidence in saying, I am grateful for the good in all of your lives.
I am grateful for the good in your lives.
This is week 2 in a series drawn more or less from the little booklet called Seed Time and Harvest by Neville Goddard, who was an amazing spiritual teacher in the 20th century. And last week we talked about the 4 mighty ones of mind. He broke life down into kind of a theatrical production. He said you have the producer, the author, the director, and the actor. All of these characters are within you. The first one conceives, the second one dramatizes, the third rehearses, and the fourth performs. And we dwelt for quite some time on the third, which is the director who rehearses, which represents the attention that we pay. And I told you that attention has been the toughest one for me in spiritual work because your mind wanders. The more distractions you have, the more likely your mind is to wander. And right now in the world, we're surrounded by plenty of distractions. Seems like more every day. So the work is a little harder. It's still our work to focus attention. Now, many of you who've had classes with me know that I say kind of relentlessly that thought plus feeling equals belief. You take thought and you wrap it in feeling, and that forms a dynamic package of energy called belief. And you've heard it said that it's done unto you as you believe. Therefore, it's done unto you as you think/feel. And I want to add another one like that, another saying like that out of Neville, which is imagination plus attention equals faith. Imagination plus attention equals faith. This is useful for me because faith is vague a lot of times. We were all told when we were kids that it was good to have faith in God and we should pray, and when faced with trouble we should turn to our faith, whatever the nature of our faith was, whatever our explanation of God or our religious background. And then we hear John Lennon, he says, and no religion. I always do, whenever Jeffrey sings Imagine, and I'm sitting over where he is now behind him, I'll lean forward and I'll say, no religion. And he'll be like, shut up, I'm doing the song. Well, we've heard an awful lot about faith all our lives, but not any great explanations came my way, till I read Ernest Holmes. Ernest Holmes told me that fear and faith are the same thing. And I'm like, what? And what he means is that it's a principle that has a different outcome as processed depending on the input that's given to it. And so if I have faith in what I do not want to have happening, it's faithful fear. And it's activating a spiritual principle and using it along certain specific lines. And if I have faith and belief in something happening that I do prefer to have happen, a quality of life, then I'm using faith in a positive and powerful and constructive way. The first kind of faith that's fear-based has within it its own undoing. It starts to unravel as soon as you use it, as soon as you go there, because it's running counter to the progressive nature of life, which is about constructiveness. It's about building and moving forward and building up and so on. And fear that wants to tear down, that wants to erode the foundation under things, has within it the seeds of its own undoing. Fear doesn't get punished, it just kind of collapses under its own weight, so that faith then can arise from where fear once stood. Phoenix-like, really, from its ashes. Imagine that you are an immortal being. I believe you are. I can't prove it, but I believe you are. I believe we all are. So imagine that you're an immortal being. You're going to live forever in one form or another. You won't always be in the form that you're in now, but you haven't always been in it anyway, have you? There was a time when you were born, they have records of this, you were somewhere else before you got here. So we pass through lives, we pass through worlds. We don't know what that looks like, but just imagine that you're an immortal being. Now imagine that you're an immortal being worried about your mortality. So within the construct of your immortality, you're worrying about your mortality. What happens when I end? What happens when I meet oblivion? Oblivion will never come, but I can ruin today worried about it. How would it be if you had inherited a vast fortune, but you didn't know it, and so you're worried about your finances? How would it be if everybody you had encountered in your life just thought you were wonderful and wanted to be your friend, but you lacked self-worth? Now, which of these is true for you? That everybody likes you, or that you won't let it in? Well, both are true, or actually, to be really precise about it, one is factual and one is truthful. The factual part of us is that we can create a world that looks like our own phobias and neuroses, while at the same time being free, whole, complete, perfect, exquisite beings. Perfect is a word that I know sticks in the craw of a lot of people. And go back a few weeks in my talks, if they're still up online or YouTube or whatever, and see what I said about that. Because perfect doesn't mean flawless, doesn't mean you're meeting these unrealistic expectations that other people are putting on you. It means like the snow globe. I've got an article coming out on that, by the way. But the snow globe, it means that you're contained within a whole perfect sphere. Whatever's going on is contained within something larger. What is that something larger? Call it spirit. Had a conversation with somebody over the weekend on the phone, says, I really wish you'd call it the field. So for the benefit of that person who may be watching today, who knows who they are, the field. The field. And some call it God. But there is something that contains us that has within it all the answers to everything we need, even answers that we reject. But here's the kicker. When we reject the answers, we get the experience of there appearing to be no answers. And when we open ourselves to answers, we get to enjoy the appearance of there having always been answers. Because the universe is subjective to the beholding consciousness. And this is what faith is about. Faith is the belief in an unseen power that's making its way into the seen, something that is, as Neville puts it, unapparent, that's making its way into the apparent or into the visible, into appearance. It's making its way there, and it's counting on me in my life to direct it, to shepherd it, to move it into a particular quality of form through my own inner process of imagination plus attention. I imagine some reality, and then I give it my attention in my spiritual work. As I mentioned last week, it's difficult to focus in the 24/7 of life, but in your spiritual time, in the time that you have set aside for prayer and meditation, that's where to have undivided attention. Look unto me. You remember that line from a few weeks ago? Look unto me, look unto me, look unto Spirit. Look away from the busyness of life. Turn away from the noise of life. Look unto me, behold Spirit in its perfection, and watch what happens. So, I'm reading a news feed this week, and it says, here's some stuff they don't want us to know. Here are things they don't want you, the reader, to know. So I oh, cool, let's see what this is. And so I read it, and it was real. I went, yikes, it was real depressing. The stuff they don't want you to know, and why they don't want you to know it. Because they have a sinister agenda. They have a sinister agenda in you not knowing this. And so I thought, wow, okay, I'm going to take that into prayer. A little while later, I'm not making this up, I read a similar headline. Here's what they're keeping from you. And I said, well, let's read that. And it said the exact opposite of what the first one had said. Okay? And I thought, yikes, wow. Okay, I'm going to take that into prayer. And then I sat back and I thought, these aren't really about the content. These aren't really about the matter of what it is that somebody may or may not want you to know, as much as they're about disempowerment in the individual who says to themselves, if they, the authority figure, the media representative, what have you, if they won't tell me this, then I won't know it. So they're responsible for my well-being. That person who's saying that is somebody who has just handed off their power and said, here, tell me how to feel. Tell me how to feel about my life. So I want to propose to you that no one is keeping anything from you. And if they are, it's because they don't know it themselves. But if they even try, if anybody says, no, this is information that if you were to have it, you'd be too powerful, you'd be too wise, you'd be too competent at your own life, then what I'm here to tell you is that you can bypass them and go directly to the one source that has all the information that you particularly need. And no one under heaven can get between you and that source. Unless, of course, you put them there. And if you don't put them there, they can't stand there. And actually, even if you do put them there, they sort of wander off after a while because nobody's at our beck and call, But there's this power that has everything you need in it. It goes back to that famous line I'm always quoting about Ernest Holmes when the person came to him and they had this problem and it was real complicated and they laid it all out for him and they said, so Ernest Holmes, what should I do? And he said, do you remember, we can almost say this in unison together. He says, I don't know, but there is something that does know. Let's go talk to that. Or I will go talk to that. And he closed his eyes, presumably, and he went and he had a knowing with that. He communed with Spirit. I don't know, but there's something that does know. That's humility, for one thing. Also, it takes it beyond the realm of human opinion. Because right now what's going on in the culture is lots and lots of opinion, right? On what ought to happen. Not only what ought to happen, but who ought to make it happen and in what order. And I saw a meme that I thought was terrific, and I was going to save it for the appropriate season, but I'll trot it out there again when we get there. But it said, this Christmas, instead of giving everyone presents, I'm going to give them all my opinion. And can you imagine an empty, everybody's an empty house. Nobody at the table, nobody around the tree, nobody wants to hear. Because what are our opinions? We say we have an informed opinion because we read stuff and we're articulate and we can put this together, but it's still an opinion. We don't know. What we know really well is heartache. See? What we know really well is pain. And we speak our pain, and when we speak our needs in the context of our pain, it's a very powerful and authentic thing to do. But where we get into trouble a lot of times, where we kind of get into the deep end of the pool, is where we're, in our opinion, we're figuring out what other people need to do about their lives. If only so-and-so would do this, and thus and such, they'd be happy. Or even worse, in New Thought and similar teachings, when you hear people say helpfully, these are air quotes, when people say helpfully, this must have happened to so-and-so because they chose this, because they thought this. And I heard somebody, I don't know if I brought this up last week, but I heard somebody use the expression, and it was like ice ran through my veins. They said a recovering religious scientist. And I thought, oh God, a recovery. I don't want there to be anything about this teaching that people have to, recover from, like it's toxic or something, but they went on to explain what was meant by that, and it was that somebody had basically taken their inventory, read their beads, like they used to say, about this is why your life is the way it is. We never know why anybody else's life is the way it is exactly. We never know. It's a lifetime's journey to figure out our own life, why our lives are working, the choices that we've made, and using what information and all of the rest of this. So we don't tamper with that. We don't go into that level of opinion. We go to Source. And Source is going to have a different quality of answer for us than our own opinion is going to have. It's going to have a different quality of answer even than other people are going to have. Source is going to say, I love you just the way you are. As my beloved child, as my beloved experience, as the experience that I'm having in the world by means of you. I love you. Now, from that love, make your choices. From that belonging, make your choices. When you feel you belong, you make healthier choices. You take better care of yourself. You're a nicer person than the rest of the world when you feel like you belong. Spirit will say, I love you. I've given you everything. You have this world and everything in it. Then you feel like you're in possession of something, like you have an inheritance. And Scripture uses that term quite a bit. A birthright, a divine inheritance. You feel like you have it, okay? And Spirit says, I love you. And so I've surrounded you with other godlings to love you also and be loved by you. And then where does our loneliness go? Where does our low self-esteem go? This is the kind of quality of answer that Spirit offers. And sometimes we think, well, it's not enough. So I need specifics here. I need direction. Which job should I take? How should I handle this particular situation in my life? Well, Spirit says, the mind that made a star is the same mind that you use every time you think. The mind that made all the universe is that mind that appears to be encased in your head. It's larger than that, but that's where we typically picture it. And that's the mind that you use. So you have what it takes to figure it out. And Spirit, if it were to say something to us like it was a personality, it would say, look, if I told you what to do, you wouldn't be the one doing it. You kind of wouldn't be necessary even in the equation. We'd just all get moved around by pawns, and be real expendable, like if you play chess, pawns kind of are. They sort of get in the way of the power pieces, and you strategize to line up behind them and launch surprise attacks and things, Well, we're more than that. And we are co-creators. Co-creators. Not second hand, third hand. Co-creators. Right there with it. So it says you have your own answers. You know what you need to do deep down inside. And it seems to me, my opinion, I'm going to insert here, it seems to me that very often what we know to do is what scares us a little, or maybe a lot, okay? We sort of back away from it, and we sort of hem and haw and, dance all around the thing, and it's like, this is the thing to do. It's time to teach. It's time to lead. It's time to. I was talking to somebody recently who had a big opportunity presented to them to lead, and they thought, I'm kind of reading some things into this here, but it was like, am I a leader? Because the culture will tell you they're leaders and followers, like they're born that way or something, which really people aren't. Everybody has a leadership role in some area, and everybody has a following role in some area. You fall in line to somebody else's idea from time to time, and it's alarming when you're called on to do this thing. That's when you know you're on the right track. See, that's when you know you're breaking new ground, not just going over the same territory, moving into some new way. Imagination plus attention equals faith. So I want to recommend again attention in spiritual work, in the time that you take in your day to do meditation and treatment. Neville suggests, and I agree, if you start and your mind wanders, start over. And if out of your full bracketed 20 minutes or whatever, you get in a good 5 or a good 3, that's enough, because they're good. It's not just going over the grocery list again, you see, eating clock. If you start over and you get some traction and you put in the work in a small amount of time, it can move mountains. Because how much time did it take for you to come up with the image of yourself that you have now? I submit to you that it occurred in an instant. The self-image that we have, whether it's high, low, or somewhere in between, came to us suddenly, stunningly, when we interpreted reality along certain lines, and it hit us. It hit us that we were that great, or it hit us that we were that small. But it was quick, and it was incisive, and it was powerful. And so, in just a collapsed period of time, you can have the same quality of change in your life, the same quality of knowing. Finally, Neville says, faith sacrifices the apparent fact for the unapparent truth. And he's speaking here of sacrifice in the biblical context. If you give something up for the greater, it's very difficult to hold two different competing images of yourself in mind and heart. So one of them gets traded in, actually gets traded up for something else. So my suggestion for the week to come, last week it was to focus on one thing, and keep doing that as much as possible would be my recommendation. But also notice where you put truth, where you've assigned truthfulness to factuality, and only factuality to truthfulness. That is to say, try to distinguish between the absolute and the relative. Okay? Try to distinguish between the absolute and the relative. The absolute of you is, I am. The relative is everything else. The relative is every modification of I am. I am this, I am that, I am not this, I am not that. Try to distinguish between the two. And if you're in doubt, if you're in need at any point, go to the absolute. I am. I am. That's another way of saying absolute love. I am. And an idea will come to you for the next word in that phrase. I am doing. I am accomplishing. I am releasing. I am forgiving. Something will come to you next about particulars about the facts of things. Facts change. Truth does not. The truth of you does not change, ever. Why? Because it started out infinite. It has nothing to change into. It already encompasses all that is. But the fact set of you and me is always, always expanding, except when it's contracting. And when it's contracting in fear, and it's contracting in disempowerment, and there's stuff they're keeping from us, and it's somebody else is running this world, and it's not me, and all of that, as we collapse and close in on ourselves, and it gets real frightening, and it gets real claustrophobic. Back of all of that is just absolute love saying, look unto me, and it will shatter that illusion of limited factuality. We'll stand in the fullness of who we are. So I wish you an absolutely delightful week. Tomorrow is Indigenous Peoples Day, and I wish to mention it again, as I did to a group of people the other night, how where we stand here in Creative Life is the land of Indigenous people. This was the land of our ancestors, and in our hearts it still is. And we thank them for it, and their names may not be on the deed history. They got expunged at some point. This passed through a lot of hands before it came into the hands of Creative Life. But I am, for one, grateful for the people who lived these lands before the settlers got here, before this was Texas, because they took really good care of it, and we get to enjoy it now. So, God bless to the First Nations, and I think let's close with a treatment. How about real quick? My part of this. Would you like that? All right, let's do that. I think last week I just walked off without one, but I don't remember. Knowing there is one life, one power, one presence, pure spirit, everywhere radiant, everywhere sunshiny, sometimes cloudy, rainy, and sometimes cool, windy from the north in this fall. I take into my heart now the people of Central and South Louisiana who are recovering from the experience of Delta on the heels of Laura. And I affirm and know for each of them an unquenchable light, a hope, a faith, a trust within that will not be moved, shall not suffer thy foot to be moved. That streaming to them is everything they need in material supply, and especially in confidence and conviction. Life will be, once again, good. That all may thrive. And I speak this word as well for all experiencing the COVID virus, those who've had it and are recovering. Those who passed from our world too soon for we who love them. Those who give care of any kind. And those who serve society by showing up at their jobs. And all of us, really. There's so many to bless, and there's so many to include in prayer. But I focus my word now on those two groups. And there are others as well suffering across the world. And you know who they are. I leave them to you. But for now, love bringing that which appears unlike itself up to be healed means it's the high and holy task of each one of us to facilitate that healing as the co-creators that we are, working in tandem with the infinite using that same mind that created all of this to start with. I affirm and know for each one listening, watching this morning, a beautiful week stretching ahead, and with deepest gratitude for this experience of being together and all who make it possible, I release this word now into principle, into law, into the process by which faith manifests in form. And I call it done, and so it is.
All right, I'm cheating a little bit because I could tell you a fantastic story about the squirrels in the park, but I'm not going to because it wouldn't be true. I've done something to my knee, so I'm not negotiating the stairs today. And I'm going to know that it is going to go back to the no thing that it is. But just a quick reminder, we do still do the Power of 10 after service. It is done virtually. There is a link in the comments. Please look for that. I just glanced and saw that it's PJ today. She is our newest practitioner. She's fantastic. You'll love her. So please call in and give her some work to do. Let her know something fantastic for you. And the PayPal link is in the comments as well for us to keep. We want to keep the sound on, if nothing else, right? The sound and the light, so you can see. We don't want to do this in the dark. We don't. All right. Yeah. We need that electricity. But, yeah. And I know this week came fast and furious at us. If you're watching and you're not from this area, we do live in very South Texas. We are very close to the Gulf. We're probably, a little more than an hour away. And so we definitely hold our brothers and sisters in Lake Charles, close to our heart. 6 weeks ago, Laura tore through there, and then just a couple of, we're talking less than 72 hours. Delta took it out again. So please hold them close to your heart. And of course, I can't not mention the band in heaven is getting really, really, really good, because they just got a really amazing guitar player by the name of Eddie Van Halen. So we're all sorry to see him go, but we know that he is going to go and create even more fantastic music, and they'll be waiting when we get there. So music never dies, it just changes form. So in that knowing, I'm going to know that there is one life, one power, one presence, one love. And that love flows through us, in us, as us. We are a part of that love, and more importantly, we are the moving part of that love. We are the hands and feet of spirit. We are the ones that show up and do the work. We are the ones that channel that power into this world and make this world the heaven on earth that it is. And so I know that. I know that about each and every one of you bright lights out there and all of the lights in the universe. That we are channeling that love, we are pulling it down, and we are manifesting all that it is necessary, all that is needed, all that is desired, and we are responding. We are responding in ways that we couldn't even anticipate, because we are responding in that love. And so I know this. I'm grateful for this. And I release this, knowing that it is so, even as I speak these words. And so it is.
Say with me now, something wonderful is happening through me.
Something wonderful is happening through me.
I feel it in my body.
I feel it in my body.
I feel it in my mind.
I feel it in my mind.
I feel it in everything I am.
I feel it in everything I am.
I choose it.
I choose
I
it.
trust it.
I trust
I
it.
use it.
I use
And I
it.
love it.
And I love it.
So it is.
And so it is.